Let's take a look at nonverbal communication in cross-cultural contexts. And as a healthcare provider, we work with an increasingly diverse population in the workplace, especially here in New Mexico. You know, it's a melting pot. We see lots of different people from different cultural backgrounds, and that's okay. That's actually a really good thing. But because of nonverbal communication, it can lead to misunderstanding because of cross-cultural differences. So we do have to be careful with that as well. And it's important for the healthcare provider to be aware of these potential differences. So we have to do a little bit of research when we work with different populations to kind of understand where they're coming from, so that way we don't necessarily provide barriers during treatment by having misunderstandings. Some examples of areas which such misunderstandings may occur can include facial expressions. Facial expressions play an important part of interpersonal communication, and it gives us an idea of where somebody's coming from in terms of nonverbal communication. Now, expressions can be difficult because culturally they can mean different things. So we really want to be careful in terms of the facial expressions that we use based off of the different cultures that we work with. For example, the smile. Everyone knows how to smile. However, not all members of cultural backgrounds smile for the same reasons. And not all cultures believe that smiling is appropriate in the same situations. So even smiling can be taken as offensive. So again, we have to be careful with the nonverbal communication aspects, make sure that we're not offending anybody in the process. Crying or facial expressions of grief and sadness can vary from culture to culture as well. Different cultures will express sadness differently, and we have to respect and understand how that works. Eye contact is going to be another thing. Eye contact is extremely important in terms of nonverbal communication, but like facial expressions, it can mean very different things to different cultures. Touching is going to be another thing that's very culturally specific. And as a healthcare provider, you're frequently going to need to touch patients, especially in physical therapy. So before we do so, we have to ask permission to place our hands on or around the treatment area before we provide treatment. We have to remain aware that touching another person can have very different meanings to members of different cultures. And this is also context specific. So again, being very careful in terms of touching is going to be something that we have to have in the back of our minds, especially in the field of physical therapy. Handshaking is another one of those cross-cultural things. This form of touch and its meaning can also vary greatly from culture to culture. American culture commonly uses the handshake as a form of a greeting with friends and strangers, but other cultures have complex views on handshaking. So we have to be careful with that. And especially in this day and age, especially after COVID-19, we try to reduce the amount of contact between people. So handshaking in the US will probably continue to be a thing, but will be something that will be in the back of our minds, not only from a cross-cultural standpoint, but from a healthcare standpoint, medical standpoint as well. Time is another thing that's considered nonverbal, and how we use our time communicates a lot about us. So in terms of punctuality, practicing healthcare provider should be aware of the many different accepted ideas of punctuality when interacting with people from other cultures. Some cultures value punctuality, other cultures do not value punctuality. And we shouldn't take those things personally if a patient comes into treatment late every single time for their scheduled appointment. We just have to schedule them appropriately to ensure that they get the best care. The pace of time also is a cross-cultural thing. So Americans are always in a hurry. They can't wait to finish what they're doing so that way they can move on to the next project. And other cultures around the world don't really understand what the rush is. They want to take their time. And so there's nothing wrong with that. But again, just being aware that time and pacing are definitely cross cultural.